Okay, good afternoon everyone. Thank you for those that just let me know that the sound was okay. And yes, we'll get started now. By my watch, we're okay. So again, thank you very much for joining and taking the time this afternoon to spend an hour on workflow. So yeah, for those I haven't met yet, my name is Nick Macon, for those. And if you do have any questions at any stage, even if you're watching this not live, you can always feel free to email us using ask@thenavpeople.co.uk. And if it's any question whatsoever about any version of NAV at all, as long as it's NAV related, we promise to get back to you. So yeah, that's the guarantee there. So if there's any question whatsoever, feel free to write to us at that email address and we'll get back to you. So the aim of today's session is basically to introduce workflow. 1 hour isn't enough time to delve deep into it, but we're going to have a look at it today, and hopefully by the end of today's session, you'll understand a lot more about it anyway. For those that are interested, again, feel free to write back to us, and we can send you some materials if you want any further reading on it. But for those that are interested as well, all of the MSDN articles on workflow are actually really good. And for those that don't know, Microsoft themselves actually have a YouTube page, and on there they have a ERP channel, and then Microsoft Dynamics NAV. I think that's the structure. And then they do have stuff for setting up workflow, introductions to events. You've got all these videos about some of the topics we'll be covering in our webinars coming up. We're going to have a look at how you can set up your own workflow in 2016. After that, we're going to trigger a workflow and we're going to see how that looks and feels in NAV. Later on, for about 5 minutes at the end, we're just going to touch on nHanced workflow. That's probably quite important, only because we've had a product for about 5 or so years now. So we're just going to have a little look at that and maybe one or two of the differences. Hopefully, time dependent, we'll have a few minutes for questions at the end, so we're going to go through that. Okay, so just to get started, we're going to introduce what is workflow. And pretty much what is this thing I've heard so much about? We'll try and answer that here. I know a fortnight ago we ran very, very quickly through workflow. So hopefully today we're just going to lightly jog through it all. So hopefully it should make a lot more sense than it did last fortnight. It was introduced in Dynamics NAV 2016, for those that don't know. So it's only been in the product for about 6 months. Obviously that is a big deal because in previous versions, when people have been talking to us about workflow, it's often been for some companies bespoke customizations and stuff like that. So it's great that out of the box with Dynamics NAV 2016, it comes with a workflow product. There have been previous attempts in older versions such as approvals. Again, those mechanisms have been replaced with workflow now. 1 or 2 of the pages are still there, so you'll probably be familiar with 1 or 2 concepts if you've used the old approval mechanism. But for those that haven't, don't worry, we'll go through all that today. But essentially, what it does, it allows you to connect business processes or tasks that may or may not be performed by different users, if that makes sense. Using workflow, you can also include system tasks, such as automated postings. These can be included as separate stages in a workflow. We'll have a look at these stages later. But the nice thing is these automated postings could be preceded or followed with a user stage or a user task, I should probably say. So just to kind of start to explain what makes up a workflow in 2016. The first thing we're going to look at today are workflow templates. And I definitely, for those that have 2016 or may have 2016 in the future, or even reading up on 2016, I definitely recommend having a look at the existing workflow templates out there. They are a great way just to get an idea of how workflow hangs together. There are probably a bunch of 20, maybe 30 workflow templates, that Microsoft provide out of the box. And using those, you can understand how Microsoft envisaged this workflow or this function working together. So I definitely recommend having a look at those workflow templates. Using those workflow templates, you can edit them as well. So you can add or remove stuff to them. That'll be our first example today anyway, would be editing an existing template. So we'll go through that today, and that should give you some idea of where you can get started anyway when you come to look at workflow templates. A workflow can have one or more steps, so you can have multiple things that happen in this workflow. We'll have a look at this later as well. We'll have a look at all these later, but just to introduce them. A workflow step is made up of a combination of two things. It's made up with a workflow event and a workflow response. So based on this happening, do this. So that's what a step is. A step has to have both of those parts. What you can also have a on condition, which sits in the middle of an event and response. So you can say when this thing happens, only when it meets this criteria, then do that, which is really nice. It's nice to be able to put that in the middle of it. The next part of workflow setup is approval users. It's something that's been in the product, I believe I'm right in saying, since 2013. But again, now this is the page where you can come to set up how your approvals are set up. So you can say, if this person sends an approval, it's going to go to this person. If John triggers an approval, it's going to go to Phil. This is where you can do that sort of setup. Again, this was used in previous versions for the old approval mechanism, but Microsoft have just kept that there so we can reuse that now. One thing that's probably worth mentioning is that if you did have a bespoke customization done, if you had your own set of tables and pages and all that put onto Dynamics NAV, that you wouldn't necessarily be able to create a workflow for it. It probably would require developer customizations and modifications to do so.